Okay, so right about this point is where I'm realizing that this video is going to be really funny, really fun to splice together and edit. But you know, whatever. You know, I'm doing these because hopefully people will learn from my mistakes. And I mean, earlier in the video, I pointed out that yeah, I made a mistake. So, all right. So here's where I'm at now. So I have the connections together for your. If you have a probably a 98 up to 04 Nissan Pathfinder with 4-cylinder. You have 3 connections that you have to take care of. Up on top, you can kind of see if I can get through here a little bit. See a little bit of dirty red there. That is your positive terminal connection, and just to the right of that, which is going to be really difficult to see, there is a 2-pin electrical connector that goes to something, and if I figure out what that is, I will put that in the notes or superimpose it on the video when I do the editing. And then there's a ground connection that's even harder to see. So hopefully you can see there's a little black wire just to the right of that red positive cap. And that's a ground. Hi, there's my camera strap. Once again, I got to take that thing off of here. But anyway, so it's mounted in. Putting it back together is a hell of a lot easier than taking it apart. I will tell you that. So both of the mounting bolts are in place. There's a big long lower bolt that's a pivot point. Serves as a pivot point when you're actually doing the belt tensioning. And then the... see if I can get this to sit in a spot. Yeah, okay. So this is actually the belt tensioner assembly. The upper mounting bolt goes right into this little nub right here. There's a little kind of boxy thing here. And on the other side of this bracket is the boss that receives this bolt. So this is ready to be tensioned up. I have the belt back in place. The belt hits 3 points. It hits the drive pulley for the alternator. It goes around. This is also drives the water pump. It's funny when the motor started making a weird noise the other day. Move this around a little bit. When the motor started making a weird noise the other day, it was it's either the alternator or the water pump, and the water pump wasn't weeping. So when it comes to the point where I have to change the water pump, I'm going to have to loosen this sucker up again to get to this. But when you're putting it back together, just make sure before you take it apart, make sure that you note what pulleys your belt is running over, and then make sure that you feed those around the same pulleys as you begin to put everything back together again. So this particular belt runs from the alternator over the top to the water pump here, and then directly below this is the harmonic balancer, and there's a pulley. There's a slot in that pulley down there. It's kind of hard to see. You can see the water down there, kind of, sort of, and that's where that sucker connects to the crankshaft, which is what drives everything. So the same belt that drives your water pump is the same one that drives your alternator. Congratulations. Golly. So anyway, learning a lot, getting to know my truck. That's always a good thing. So you can also notice I still have not reconnected. Get this to stick up here or something. I still haven't connected the upper or the lower radiator hoses. I've left those out of the way. I figured they're off. It doesn't do me any good to connect them up until I've got everything else done. So if there's one thing to learn from this, it's get the radiator hoses out of the way, and it makes your life a hell of a lot easier. Especially with those connectors on the top of the alternator, getting those in place, it was so much easier to do that without having these hoses in the way. So live and learn. Would have been nice if that would have been included in the manual, but what are you going to do? So anyway, so I'm checking in. So my next step, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, my next step, I just made it a hell of a lot harder to see, is I'm going to light back here a little bit. Hopefully that helps a little bit. So this is the tensioning bolt righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So I'm going to start cranking on this. I'm cranking, I'm able to turn this by hand right now. It's so loose. But that'll change here shortly, and I'll start cranking it up and getting ready to adjust the tension. And once I get this the way I want it and snugged up just right and adjusted properly, I'll come back and do a little snippet. I'll use this belt as an example, which is actually almost a little too tight. But I'll use this as an example of how to check your belt tension. So we'll cover that here as like a little bonus footage, and then hopefully everything will be right as rain when I'm done with this thing. Okay, as promised, here's a real quick tutorial insert on belt tension. So you need to span 2 pulleys in the run of the belt. So here's a pulley. Here's actually a tensioner right here. And then this is the drive pulley for the power steering unit. So I have conveniently chosen a ruler to span those 2 pulleys, and to check tension you want to press with your thumb. Let me go this way. I think the lighting's a little better if I do it this way. You want to press with your thumb, and that belt should deflect about 1/4 of an inch or so. I know it's kind of hard to see. I'm going to get down here a little bit better, and of course that's going to slide. Let me fix it. Try to fix it. Come on. Play nice. That's not. Alright. So, you really don't want a lot. You want a little bit, but not a lot. And the reason you want a little bit is, unlike most other materials on Earth, rubber, when it gets hot, actually contracts. Most of the materials on the planet, when they get cold, they contract. Think of ice cubes in your ice cube tray in your freezer. They shrink up a little bit, and it makes them easier to pop out of the tray. So in this case, with rubber belts, when they get hot, that's when they shrink. And when they cool, they expand. Which explains why sometimes when you have a loose belt and you first start your car in the morning and you hear that cheep, 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 that squeaking sound, and then after a minute or so, once things get warmed up, it goes away. That's because that belt has contracted and the squeak goes away. So the way to make the squeak go away is to increase the tension, cold tension on your belt, and then that'll go away. So I'm really not going to show you this on the alternator belt because it's like way the hell under there, and I still need to go under there and do that. But I promised you a little demonstration on belt tension, so consider that done. Okay, I'm back for another short video. I just wanted to check in really quick and just kind of give you guys a shot. Down there in the bottom you can see all shiny and new is my alternator with the belt around it, and all the radiator hoses are back in place, and there's a funnel because I'm about to start refilling the radiator. Fortunately, the front end is up on jack stands, so hopefully it won't take too much to burp all the air out of the system once I get it fired up. And I'm going to leave it up on the jack stands when I start it for the first time to help get it refilled. I'm really not going to pay too much attention to getting it precisely, totally, completely filled. I just want it to be filled enough so that it won't overheat on the short term until I do a complete flush and refill on the cooling system, which I will do. And since I've talked about it a couple of times, I will film that. But just wanted to, kind of go over everything and show how I've got everything buttoned back together and cleaned up, and I spent some time cleaning my tools. Always take the time to clean and organize your tools. Your tools are your friend. They're going to do so much work for you. You need to do some work for them. So checked underneath. We're all clear. Still, see, I'm still up on jack stands, yada yada. But here shortly, I'm going to reconnect the battery and fire it up for the first time and see how everything's working, and then get the cooling system semi-topped off. I will refill it to the point of putting back in what's in the bucket, and then I'll worry about that for the next shot. So, just a real quick check-in, and we'll see how it goes.